everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight on our ongoing coverage here at My Radar. I'm Chief Meteorologist Leslie Hudson, joined with Stefanie Lauber. Over the next few minutes, we're going to give you an update on Tropical Storm Cristobal, which made landfall within this hour. Technically, it made landfall 5:10 Central Standard Time, which is 6:10 here and along the East Coast. And we, of course, Stefanie's been tracking the tropical storm all day. We have had rounds of severe weather, not only across Louisiana and the Gulf Coast, but also in the state of Florida, where there's been multiple tornado warnings, flash flooding concerns, a problem now for the state of Florida. And now that it's made landfall, we are concerned about the flooding problems in the New Orleans area and where the low-lying areas there in Louisiana. So I'm going to take a look at the live radar, and then Steph's going to come in and show you some more with the storm, but at least wanted to give you an update in terms of the rain. So in terms of severe weather, like we saw yesterday, the up news to this is, if you can call it that, there are currently no severe weather warnings in this area. So we've got 5 live radars up. You can see them. The yellow and the oranges, of course, are where the heaviest rains are. We've got some radar sites up in Florida, and then, of course, up in the Gulf Coast area as well. Let me zoom in, and we'll show you again. You can kind of see the outer part of the center of circulation. It's not really well defined here on the radar. This has not been a classic tropical cyclone by any means. It kind of took on some hybrid characteristics starting yesterday with a very elongated comma-shaped cloud deck that was impacting the state of Florida yesterday, but nonetheless officially making landfall very near Grand Isle, between Grand Isle and the mouth of the Mississippi River. So the big concern tonight and tomorrow is going to be right along the Mississippi River there, where folks can flood very easily, and we're getting heavy rain rates here, you guys. 1 to 2 inches, another 2 to 4 expected in the next 24 hours or so. Most of those bands that you see here, let me scoot the radar just over a bit towards the east, and you can see some of these bands, and I'll grab the pointer here. These are also have some winds packed inside of them. So just to the west now of Panama City, we're dealing with some winds probably in the neighborhood of 30, 40 miles an hour. Where we've got the orange returns here, the heavier returns, these are probably 40 miles, 45 miles an hour. And of course, the center, generally in this area, we're talking about the winds when it came onshore was 50 miles an hour. So the concern will be that that folks that live in this area still going to be dealing with those winds. And the storm surge started earlier today, of course. We've got a live camera actually over in Pensacola. Let me show you that real quick, because the sun is setting in the state of Florida here not too long. We're losing some sunlight, I should say. But you can still see there is a good amount of rain there. The sea has been pretty angry, of course. The surf has been anywhere from 6 to 8 feet just offshore. And then, of course, when the actual center came onshore, the actual inundation in this area was 3 to 5 feet. So the flooding was a big concern. And still is going to be. It's going to take several hours for that wall of water, if you will. Remember, the storm surges when the ocean and the land meet and become one temporarily with a landfalling cyclone. So we've got velocity mode up now, and I'm on the Lake Charles, Louisiana radar site. And again, what we'd be looking for is what are called couplets, and that's when we would see some, in this particular instance, we would see a green or inside of the red there, which would indicate there's some rotation being picked up in the velocity mode. We haven't seen that today. There has been some warnings in the Gulf Coast, but not like what we saw yesterday in Florida, which really had a really busy day in Central Florida in particular. So I'm scanning back now over. I'm in Slidell. Just going to take a quick scan here across the Gulf Coast in velocity mode, see if we see anything interesting. And it's certainly not uncommon, you guys, now on Mobile's radar, to get these brief spin-ups. Usually these are EF0s, EF1s. Sometimes we'll get an EF2 when we're getting a landfalling cyclone. And we definitely saw that yesterday. There are several reports in the state of Florida, about a dozen, I believe, in that area. Now headed further towards the east, just taking a quick scan, and things looking pretty good. But don't let that fool you and think, oh, there's no severe weather, because we're talking about a storm that has now made landfall, and now we're going to still have those sustained winds for a bit of time here, for a few more hours at least. It's going to take a while for it to spin down to a depression, and the risk, of course, will be for folks that haven't secured anything in their lawn, their front yard, their backyards. You have to remember, power lines are very susceptible when you get a lot of rain in a short amount of time. Sometimes these winds can produce 60-mile-per-hour gusts, and that can make power lines pretty vulnerable. So I'm going to go ahead and head back over towards Louisiana. Just going I'll broaden out the picture here a little bit. But things are looking relatively quiet in terms of the risk of severe weather, but there is still that possibility that we could be dealing with some brief spin-ups here. And there has been tornado watches in this area earlier today, and we have flood watches, of course, as well. And some of these bands, again, let me point that out. This one right here, this is packing some pretty decent wind right now, and that's also got some really, really heavy rain. That's talking probably in the neighborhood of 3 inches an hour. Tropical downpours. Let me zoom into that one. Let's see where this one is, because it's going to rotate right into Louisiana, and just now starting to move very near on the northeastern quadrant of the state there. So as it gets closer to Amita City and Hammond, just right around the interstate there's going to be heavy rain returns there, you guys, as we head through the next couple of minutes and into the next hour or so. So be careful if you're in that area of the state. I wanted to show you the big picture here, because there's all kind of flood watches up in preparation for what Cristobal, or the leftovers, will bring to the Mississippi and the southern Mississippi River Valley as we head into the next 24 to 36 hours. Most of the data we're looking at, the modeling indicating several more inches is possible. So it's not just the Gulf Coast, it's not just Louisiana that needs to be watching this, it's also this area of the country. Let me zoom in here, because this is where a lot of the flood watches are that you need to be watching tomorrow and into Tuesday and even into Wednesday. So we'll be talking about this event right in here. You can see the outline. This is the areas that we'll be talking about over the next 3 days. So rain returns, the estimates, the modeling data indicates 2 to 4 inches. It's going to move very quickly just to the west of the Mississippi River and through the valley there, and then head up into the Great Lakes and then up into Canada by mid-Wednesday. So it's really going to be moving quickly. That will help suppress some of that problem of getting a lot of torrential downpours. A lot of times we get these storms that just come in and they lose their steering currents and they just sit for days and days and just rack up numbers of 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 inches of rain. It looks like from this vantage point, because we're talking about this pretty much going from Louisiana to Canada in the course of 3 days, the amount and the opportunity for flooding will be less, but there's still going to be opportunity for flooding. The National Weather Service office is there, and these local branches have already made the preparations, issuing these flood watches in preparations that there's going to be a risk for this flooding risk as we head through the next couple of days. So there's a look at the rotation. You can see it kind of nicely now. At the center is much more easy to pick up. But let me show it to you. It's right in here, and I'll loop it one more time. Whoops, I went the wrong way. Let me back that up, and we'll show it one more time. And you can kind of see the center as it came in. As I mentioned, it wasn't really a truly well-defined tropical cyclone. So it's been interacting with the United States for a couple of days now, so that also tends to inhibit its inner core. There's also been some dry air that's been in training, not in the center of the core, but on the outer, just outside the actual center of circulation, again, inhibiting its chance to really strengthen. So that's all good news. We certainly didn't want something stronger than a tropical storm. Those are enough to deal with. Storm surge has been a big problem. Many parts of Louisiana have been underwater for hours since this morning. The storm surge came in well in advance of the center, and there's folks that are still dealing with that storm surge as we head into the next 24 hours, or at least not the next 24 hours, but the next several hours, and then things should start to improve across parts of Louisiana as we head into tonight and into tomorrow. I did want to quickly let you know that there's still the risk for that severe weather. The Storm Prediction Center still has it at a slight risk for parts of Louisiana and Mississippi and a little bit of Alabama. So again, these 3 states need to definitely be aware tonight. Have your app ready to roll. Hopefully your notifications are turned on. They were really important for us yesterday here in Central Florida. We broadcast in Orlando, if you're not aware, where one of the My Radar offices are, and we had several rounds of severe weather here. So the app was great, giving us notifications when warnings were being issued, tornado watches. So make sure you have your app handy, and that way you're ready to act quickly. Now, Damien, if you want to take WSI full, we can kind of show everybody the bigger picture here of what everyone can expect. And it looks like as we head through the next couple of hours, you guys, we're still going to be concerned about the tornado watches, but we're also concerned about where Cristobal is headed. So more on that is meteorologist Stefanie Lauber.
Yeah, thanks, Leslie. It's been a fun one, to say the least, where we've seen lots of activity from this. Storm reports aplenty across the southeast from this. And guys, we also have severe weather going on in other parts of the country. So it's just been an active one all over. But all eyes on the tropics as Tropical Storm Cristobal makes its landfall here along the northern Gulf Coast. We've had quite a bit of flooding in that tip of the boot in Louisiana. We've had flooding across North Florida. You may have seen some of our live hits earlier where the video showed a dumpster floating down a street that was temporarily a river. It was aptly named McCoy's Creek Boulevard, and McCoy's Creek came onto the road there. So interesting stuff there. I want to take you now back to the radar where we could see some of what's going on with the mechanics of the storm. Like Leslie mentioned, we've had some dry air across the left side or the west side of the storm here, and that has played a big role in what folks in Texas and West Louisiana have been seeing in terms of the storm, or as I should say, not seeing, because it has been fairly dry on this side. Dry air and training into the storm all along here. Look, there's not much going on throughout parts of Kansas, Oklahoma, or Texas at all. Very dry air throughout the atmosphere, and that wraps up into this storm and chokes things off rain-wise. It really does not let this storm get any kind of strength going here. That's why we didn't see any kind of intensification as the storm moved through the very warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico. As you know, that's their food source. They love it. But when you have dry air, it really keeps things at bay. Unfortunately, though, did maintain tropical storm status, came in at 50-mile-an-hour winds, pressure sitting at 993, I believe, at landfall. So pretty potent low pressure system here, and just dumping loads of rainfall all across the Gulf Coast states here, throughout parts of the Panhandle as well. And we want to bring you up on what's going on here with some of these bands across North Florida, where we got a report coming in from the emergency management here. I'll zoom in a little closer to the Florida-Georgia border, right where I-75 runs into Georgia. Jennings, somebody came in with a report at their home weather station of 21 inches of rain. That has yet to be verified by the National Weather Service office there, but rainfall rates since midnight, starting earlier today, have been on the order of 12 to 15 inches accumulated so far in this area of the border between Florida and Georgia. Right here. So things have been looking pretty ugly across the Gulf Coast states. You can see very heavy rainfall here in parts of northern Taylor County, going just east of Tallahassee along I-10. In fact, some lanes of I-10, at least in Florida, were shut down because of the flooding. Water coming onto the roadway, not safe to pass. And several reports from DOT agencies across Florida, at least into Alabama, where folks were spinning out over the roads. Plenty of accidents of an account of all this rain, heavy rainfall moving through the Gainesville area up through Jacksonville and into South Georgia by Brunswick. Valdosta getting in on this. And then there seems to be a bit of a lull between the bands here in the Panhandle by Apalachicola. And as we shift further to the east, here's that rain band Chief Meteorologist Leslie Hudson was talking about. This one is a hefty batch of storms coming through, especially the one she was focusing on here, moving into Louisiana. So more heavy rainfall to come with this storm, and packing tropical storm force winds and gusts. Those expand outwards more than 100 miles. So folks here in the Florida Panhandle, the Alabama and Mississippi Panhandles will be dealing with those tropical storm force winds and heavy downpours well into tonight, though the storm has made landfall. And then this tropical moisture isn't just going to go away. It's going to pick up as the system continues to move on its northerly path, and with that bring that tropical moisture and mean heavy downpours for folks all along the Mississippi River. And that's why those flood watches are in effect now, to let folks know what to expect going into the next 24 hours, even 48 hours, because of all the rainfall expected with this storm. So folks in Louisiana, you've gotten a lot of rain so far. You're still going to get some more going into tonight and to tomorrow. We're not done yet, because even though the storm has made landfall, we've still got a ways to go with this, but at least we are definitely at the halfway point by now. I want to talk a little bit about the watches and warnings that are in effect. There hasn't been much change with that in the forecast. NHC has done a great job nailing this one on the path, the intensity, and the timing with this, even with the issues of the eye not being able to get itself together here. We have seen some good consistency with the forecast here. Tropical storm warning in effect from the Okaloosa-Walton County line. That's in Florida, in the Panhandle, as you see there, going across the Alabama Panhandle, the Mississippi Panhandle, all the way around to about the center of the Louisiana coastline there on the Gulf to Intracoastal City, Louisiana. So this area is still under tropical storm warning. Of course, this storm just made landfall, so expect 50-mile-an-hour winds in this area. And outside could see gusts to tropical storm force. That's 39 miles per hour or greater. So the threat is still there, folks. Don't give up your sense of urgency just yet. Definitely heed all the warnings issued by your local agencies, because this storm is still very potent here and packing a punch all across the Gulf Coast, not only in the area under the warning. So you need to take precautions. If you don't have to be out on the roadways, I urge you not to be. We've seen folks out at the beach down in southwest Florida where the storm isn't near there, but if we take you to a shot of the video out at Siesta Key, you can see storm surge is a problem all along the Gulf Coast, even in Texas where they didn't get the rain from this storm. At high tide, we did see some flooding from some folks over in Corpus Christi. So it just goes to show you, look at those seas. They are mean. Wow. Lots of folks out on the beach. Not really the best kind of sea to be swimming in. This comes from our partners at Surfline. You can see it's a great thing that people are by the lifeguard stand, because you really don't want to be heading into that water too much. Seas very mean all across the Gulf Coast there, even as far south as southwest Florida. Siesta Key, popular vacation place there. So not a surprise to see all the folks out there, but you definitely want to be careful with this one. Don't take your chances. Best just to sit home and wait for the ugly weather to pass by and keep your curiosity at bay, because we have had reports of trees down, power lines down, flooded roads. Again, you don't want to be driving through flooded roads. You don't know if power lines might be underwater. They could be live or otherwise. You don't know. So it's just best to play it safe and stay home, let the storm go by. Some other issues we've been dealing with, aside from the tides, has been the storm surge itself. And so with that, we've had storm surge warnings in effect for this area, particularly along the east side of Louisiana, what I like to call the tip of the boot here. You'll see in these darker shades of magenta, that's where the storm surge warning is. And that's because all the water is pushing into that side of Louisiana, quite literally pushing some of those Gulf of Mexico waters right into these lower elevations at sea level or below sea level in many places. And I think it's safe to say many of these places were evacuated or had some kind of evacuation order in place. That lighter shade of pink is a storm surge watch. So that is an area where the surge is coming in almost parallel to the shoreline there. It's a very jagged edge on the coastline there, but definitely a threat still as these waters push in a northeasterly manner, because at this point you're very close to the circulation, so you're getting a northeasterly flow with those winds. And that's actually why folks in the panhandles of Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida have been seeing the worst of the storm. That's what we like to call the dirty quadrant, where all the heaviest winds and rain come in on that right front quadrant, the northeast quadrant of the storm. That's what we've seen here. So storm surge anywhere from 3 to 5 feet above where it's supposed to be, folks. So not safe at all over there. Definitely take the precautions of your local agencies. Stay put where you are in your safe place as we wait for the storm to pass. Thankfully, there were a lot of fears that this storm, when it slowed down from 12 miles per hour to 5 miles per hour, oh no, we don't want this thing to stall out. But the good news is here, it looks like that's not going to be the case. It did pick up a little bit of speed as of the 5 p.m. Eastern advisory that came out, coming back up to 7 miles per hour. And it looks like the upper level steering currents are going to continue pushing this to the north and take it around into the Great Lakes as by the time we head into the middle part of the week. Unfortunately, that also means other parts on the way to the Great Lakes are going to get those heavy downpours. So definitely an issue with this storm coming through, but hey, we are almost done with it. To show you on enhanced infrared radar what this thing looks like. You can see where those strongest thunderstorms are trying to bubble up, and I'll put this on a loop here. There you go. You can see those bright shades of oranges, reds. That's where those biggest billowing up cumulonimbus clouds are with this storm, and that's where we see the most potent thunderstorms. And this shows you exactly how lopsided the storm is, where everything is well off to the east and very close to that undefined center, so to speak, on the imagery here. And like we said earlier, left side of the storm, not really seeing much. But if you look at the end of this loop, you'll notice near the center things start expanding outwards. Well, as the storm moves on shore and it meets that friction of the coastline, and begins to weaken, then we will see those storm force winds expanding outwards. And that's where the danger continues for folks there along the Gulf Coast. It's not just the immediate areas near the center of circulation, but as the storm moves in and begins to weaken, it's kind of like the ice skater who does a spin and has their arms moved in. By the time it begins to slow down, arms are going out. So are those tropical storm force winds. So that's a metaphor to try to help you understand it, but these winds are going to be a problem going into the evening hours of tonight. So you want to make sure you are heeding all of the warnings issued, and definitely keep your MyRadar app handy. You have your location on, you will get alerts tailored to your exact location. So a big help there. And you can track the storm with us and catch it on the radar and see exactly what's going on with Cristobal as we go into tonight. Likely to become a post-tropical storm here over the next couple of hours, especially as the terrain begins to beat this storm up. But that doesn't mean we are done yet, folks. Here's some of the projected accumulated rainfall totals going into the next 24 hours. So by tomorrow afternoon, we'll see an additional inch or so across parts of Florida, and then heading into the Mississippi River Valley, you see those bright shades of red is where we'll see the heaviest rainfall for folks here along the central Gulf Coast. Some of these rainfall totals underdoing it a little bit, but at least going to see an additional inch or two going on into Wednesday as the storm begins to move away from the coastline, still getting some of the rainfall there. So we'll have to keep an eye on this. But in general, we just wanted to give you an update now that the storm has made landfall on the coast of Louisiana there, very close to the mouth of the Mississippi River and near Grand Isle, Louisiana. So just wanted to give you an update on what's going on, where we're tracking these storms, and just to let you know, we're about at the halfway mark here before things start to settle down. So I think that's going to do it for us here tonight at the MyRadar Studios, tracking Tropical Storm Cristobal here from our studios in Orlando, Florida. Hope everyone is staying safe, and we'll catch you in the next one.